facing you. It stands above the trace of things we did in old town. Did I have it in
Okay, I'm Leon Koziel, host of Leon's Library. We are only about a week and a half old into this series that is designed to expose corruption in our courts and to seek reform and to hear from all people who may have an interesting aspect to your case, something you might be litigating at the present time, and just any contemporary subject that may come up. We're open to hearing from all of you. Leon's Library was conceived only weeks ago. It is sponsored by the Citizen Commission Against Corruption, a nonprofit organization incorporated this year. It was granted 501c3 status by the IRS, so we are tax exempt. Any contributions that you give to us, you will be able to deduct for our tax purposes. And we are an organization, as I indicated yesterday and repetitively in the shows, for those of you who are new to it, we are an organization that might be considered a shadow commission. This Citizen Commission Against Corruption, CCAC as we call it, is designed to do the job that our oversight agencies are simply not doing or failing us. Window dressing commissions like former Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York, who created the Moreland Commission on Public Corruption and then dissolved it prematurely when testimony from citizens and experts and people from all over the state were implicating the governor himself. A federal prosecutor who was one of the speakers, incensed by that, seized the files and ended up convicting the top leaders of New York's legislature and the top Cuomo aide. The governor himself avoided liability, but as we know today, it caught up with him. He's no longer the governor of the state of New York. His replacement, lieutenant governor at the time, is Kathy Hochul. She recently conducted what was known as the Blue Ribbon Commission on Custody Forensic Evaluations. It's designed to look into the abuses of forensic evaluations in our divorce and family courts. And as we all know, that abuse is rampant. And it's nice to see that this commission was created at the insistence of many victims, actually. I know several are actually on that commission. It's a 20-member commission, 3 co-chairs. And they conducted a hearing on September 23rd, 2021, of which I was a speaker. Later, I found out that my video was blacked out for reasons that they still have not explained. And I think that there's that constant targeting that's going on, which shouldn't surprise us. We see that happening all the time. Only today, I got a message from a Facebook follower telling me again, Leon, you are being suppressed. You are being targeted again by Facebook. And where the source of that is, I don't know. I know the identity of the person who disclosed that to me, but that's not a surprise. The message here is one that goes after the gold mine of lawyers and service providers in our divorce and family courts. I've been at it for over 12 years. And as an attorney, I practiced law in federal and state courts prior to this and took aim at the corruption going on. And I've listed them before. They are many. My custody judge ended up admitting to sexual abuse of his handicapped 5-year-old niece, Brian Hedges. You can look him up. It's also on my website. Another judge, his replacement, was forced to resign after being found guilty of sexually harassing his court clerks. And then we had his replacement, Gerald Popio, who was censured by the State Judicial Commission for harassing remarks, threats from the bench, and racist remarks. He should have been removed. He was not. He became my custody judge. I could go on and on. All told, I went through some 40 trial-level jurists, a record by most accounts across the United States. So I know something about corruption, judge corruption, lawyer corruption. The ethics lawyers that came after me ended up being forced to resign for falsifying their timesheets. Now, these are lawyers and the chief counsel that are given the high duty of checking over billing practices, preventing them, which we know is rampant in divorce and family courts. And they were allowed to resign and went back to private practice when, let's face it, if you and I committed falsifying timesheets as a state employees, we would be prosecuted. I had clients who were prosecuted on a much lesser conduct than that. A gentleman who had who was accused of misusing a city gas card for $16 that he was appropriately reimbursing himself within an hour or two of his discharge. And he was discharged because he made public city executive raises that were being hidden from the media and the public. And so this is the kind of targeting that we see going on all the time. I'm not going to dwell on it. Look at our, we have a lot of videos, some very good quality ones. We had a great program yesterday with Stephen Boyd. He lost his 2-year-old girl to a murder by the mother. She's now doing a life sentence. She was also charged with attempted murder on the police officers who arrived at the scene. He'll never see that 2-year-old daughter, obviously. And so he formed a foundation. He's joined us. He's on our board of directors of the Ccac. And we all work together to try to get the reform. So again, we are a shadow commission. We will continue to look over any cases that you care to refer to us. We do this at no charge as far as the opening interplay. And then we will see what we can do for you. If it requires legal representation, we will find you an attorney. We will look for one. And if it requires other things, we can talk about it because every case is unique, let's face it. In any event, we are live. Both camera and audio is working today, and so I'm happy to see that. But in any event, I see a lot happening in news today, and we see particularly, again, targeting of parents. We see this sudden effort to label them as domestic terrorists simply because they want to be more involved in the schools that educate their children. At one time, that was something encouraged of parents, and now they go at it the risk of being targeted by the state. And they do hold lists. We all know that. It's out there. We've seen it happen time again. I'm not going to list all that here, but we do have that problem, and we are working on it. The call-in number here is area code 315-796-4000. Again, 315-796-4000. So I'll take calls at any time. In the meantime, I'll keep addressing these issues, which we can't possibly all get done in the short time we have here. We run generally about an hour to an hour and a half. And then the program is placed on our video, which goes onto our website. And so you can look up Leon's Library at any time. If you missed a show, you can review it there. And there are some good shows so far. Again, we've only been at this a week and a half. We started our first live show with input on Tuesday. It's now Wednesday of the following week. Tomorrow, we will feature an individual who's also on our board of directors of the Ccac, Dr. Anthony Pappas. He's a retired professor of St. John's University, and he's been very active in the reform movement down in New York City. And he came to our Parent March on Washington in 2019, addressed an audience at the Congressional Ballroom as an expert speaker. He's been all over the place. He's particularly focused on judicial immunity and changing that, modifying it, eliminating it altogether if he could. And he spent over $2 million in lawyer fees. And that was in a divorce that's still ongoing after some 14, 15 years. And there was no child issue. All of his 3 children were over the age of 21 when all this got into full swing. So he'll tell you a lot of what he went through. In my book, Whistleblower in Paris, there's a part in chapter 3 where his ordeal is laid out, and it's just fascinating. You just have to read it. I particularly like his conclusion, a label that he's put out there on social media, the trifecta of judicial bullies. I found that quite interesting. And then he will tell you who those 3 bullies are and how he dealt with them, the gag orders, the 20-year protection order. This man was never charged with a crime. He has no violent streak, not a bone in his body. He doesn't own any guns. There's nothing there that they can hang a hat on. Yet they did this to him because he was out there exposing the corruption on his case and working with so many others to try to get reform. And his judges were well aware of that, and he'll tell you more about it again. So tomorrow at 7:30, Thursday, the 18th, and we will be again live in New York City. Actually, we'll be on the move as we were a couple of times, and we'll see what we can put together tomorrow. And again, Dr. Pappas will be our guest. There are many people that have contacted me. And again, we've got the lines if you want, any of you want to input anything about current events, any topic. Again, the number here is area code 315-796-4000. Again, 315-796-4000. A lot of what I've dealt with over the years, many people who have contacted me because of my litigation background, were very engrossed in litigation. And what I have found across the country is many people who are filing pro se actions. And then they'll come to me and ask, what they did or didn't do right or wrong or what have you. And I'm not their lawyer. I don't represent them. I don't give legal advice. We don't do that here, even though I've spent nearly a quarter of a century, not just as a licensed attorney, but one that did litigation, jury trials, non-jury trials, criminal, civil, appeals. I took cases to the U.S. Supreme Court. So I've got quite the background. And my concern with the people who are going pro se in federal court is they often get a very delusional feeling of power when they file a lawsuit. And unfortunately, what's happening in our federal courts through various preclusion doctrines, technical obstacles, they are dismissing these lawsuits. And so what I like to do is offer any of those folks the opportunity to take a look at what I did back in 2009, February 2009. I filed a case, commenced initially as a class action effort, and that was filed in federal court. It was a precedent-seeking action dealing with the human rights violations that are occurring in our divorce and family courts, and using myself as a lead plaintiff in that case. We ended up with a lot of people interested in joining the lawsuit, but they weren't ready to commit the resources or the time, and so I wasn't about to waste my time with the ones who were, all talk, no action, that sort of thing. But that lawsuit went to a 45-page decision, and in that decision, you will see the many obstacles that you will have to contend with if you go into federal court. Many of these pro se litigants, when they call me, I ask the first question: do you have a lawyer? No, I don't. Well, how do you propose to do this? This is like a medical secretary doing brain surgery. How would you, and they think that by saying federal or class action and using all these kinds of buzzwords that they will get attention. And maybe they do. But for those who really know what's going on in these courts, that one lawsuit is something you ought to take a look at, because, even an experienced litigator with a background in civil rights law, the very kind of thing that people are trying to do across the country and have contacted me as such, I don't think they have the slightest idea what they're getting into. And I hate to, I'm not there to discourage them, but when you call me, I'm not there to give you what you want to hear either. That's not what, is good for you. In the end, I don't get the calls when they get thrown out. Nobody calls me afterwards when they realize that the things I said were true. One gentleman was just adamant about what he was doing. I said, if you continue on this track, you're going to end up in jail. And lo and behold, he ended up in jail. And yet, you know what? I predict some of the callers ahead of time. You're going to ignore me. You're going to ignore what I'm telling you. You're still going to plunge forward, and you're going to end up worse off for it. And then that happens. I'm not here to be proven correct. I'm here to prevent you and so many victims from falling victim again with these, sexy sounding federal lawsuits that are going nowhere. I mean, my case, I tried to bring it and did all the things that, you couldn't even think about doing, especially without a lawyer. And not just any lawyer, a lawyer who knows how to do class actions. Ask such a lawyer, how many have you done? How many have you won? How many, do you have a background in civil rights? A family court lawyer is not going to be able to do this. They'll be doing all kinds of research at your expense. And by the way, the cost of this is just phenomenal. The filing fees alone, you're going to spend maybe thousands of dollars, not just in filing fees and in added service costs, but who knows how much in terms of lost time. So, make sure you know what you're doing when you get into that. I cite one example, the Torm House. Torme is my recollection of the spelling of the first name. The last name escapes me. House, Torm House. And when I first started getting started, this gentleman would contact me and talk about all his grand ideas, all his lawsuits, class actions, and things like that. And then eventually he had to face issues of fraud because he wasn't a lawyer. He was giving legal advice, filing lawsuits, and bringing people to join him in these lawsuits, and then just leading them down, a bad path. And then everybody walks away. And no matter how many people I told to avoid this person, they still went along with him. And the last I heard, this big federal lawsuit he was bringing several years ago, I don't think it was even filed. So you got to be careful of the scammers, the voodoo lawyers, those who are actually giving advice. I know a lot of them out there. They're actually going into court with people. Either they can't afford lawyers or whatever. They're building them up, and they're harming these persons. These persons have to have a realistic outlook on what you're facing when you try to bring your family court or divorce court case into federal court because you believe your rights are being violated. Even if there are, again, look at this case. I will cite it here, write it down. It's Parent versus State. Now, parent is a pseudonym meant to mean all parents similarly situated. State being the state of New York, but meant to represent all individuals, judges, lawyers, and persons who were acting under color of law to violate rights. And so the citation is 786 Federal Supplement, second edition, page 516. You look that up and you will see all the obstacles that are faced. You'll see all the defendants that were named there, because under other areas of the law, you have to name persons in their official and personal capacities pursuant to 11th Amendment state immunity prohibitions. So very complicated. And I'm not here to educate anybody to those sorts of complexities, but I think the education I just gave you to avoid these con artists that are out there, I think is very important. You will gain a lot from that. Actually, in one case, there was in many interesting stories, but one case to back that up further was a dentist in San Francisco, California, who contacted me and stated that he had filed a pro se federal lawsuit in his divorce case. Most of this is a concern over parent alienation, deprivation of child contact, false charges. They're generally that sort of thing. Debtor prisons, support incarceration. I could go on and on, false charges. In any event, he brought his lawsuit and he wanted me to look it over. So he had sent me an email with his complaint attached. Having read that, I got back to him and I said, I really like your complaint. I think it's well done. He goes, really? Is it pro se? I go, yeah, because your complaint is a virtual duplication of my case, my complaint that I filed years earlier. And that shocked him. But what ended up happening is this pro se, or this, should I say, this legal voodoo lawyer, not licensed, never went to law school, maybe had a high school diploma at most, whatever, had charged him a fee to create his lawsuit papers and to file them. And I don't know what he told him. I don't know all the details of it. But he simply plagiarized my work and then sold it under a different name, claiming that, he's the originator and he is the person that has all this expertise. So in any event, I had to straighten him out as to what had happened to him. Great guy, too. Somebody that should never have been exposed to that kind of, abuse and fraud. So here we are again, working on different issues. Again, our call number here is area code 315-796-4000. 315-796-4000. Call at any time. And you might be able to tell us maybe some contemporary issue that is occurring and something that I may not be aware of. And again, we will review your case and proceed to report on it and refer it to the proper commission that should be doing the job of accountability. These oversight agencies that are simply not doing their job. They're window dressing entities to make you, the public, the victim, believe that government is properly self-policing itself. And the judicial branch of government, our third branch, the self-regulation is virtually untouched. They can do pretty much anything they want. We see a lot of judges getting away with misconduct. We have one commission in the state of New York. They meet, I think, like 4 times a year. They can't possibly handle all the complaints that are given to them. And you could call them, you could ask them, how are you handling all these complaints? And they will probably tell you, as I know one case, they said that we are overwhelmed. And how do you get accountability that way? In any event, we have a caller. Let's take this one and we'll continue. Go ahead. You're on Leon's Live.
Hi, Leon. It's Andrea. How are you?
Oh, hi, Andrea. How are you? We're live. I guess that's a good start, right?
I'm actually sticking to the subject of the parental alienation.
Right.
I'm not bringing anything, any other subject here right now. But I always wonder that, I don't know, do the courts even, it seems like when you say it, they just kind of let it go. They don't care. And almost that they don't take it, they don't want to take it seriously.
Well, you're right.
They want to address it seriously. And it seems like not only that, it seems like they're actually the cause of the alienation.
Well, you're right, Andrea. And, and I've seen that even in my case. I brought it up all excited that, look, we've got everything. And my ex-wife, mother of my girls, she was aggressively alienating them from me. I think every day she was working on me. Everything and anything that happened that was good, it was because of her. Anything that happened badly, well, it's because of him. And my daughters to this day don't know what really happened. You would think they want to know their father's side of this, but they don't. They have been brainwashed to such a degree, their minds so poisoned that they can write you off and erase you. This is a new phenomenon in our society today. I grew up, in a very difficult parenting environment, but I was, caring of my parents to the very end. And we don't have that moral fiber today. I don't mean, across the board, but certainly coming out of divorce and family court, they're programming these children to, line up with one child against the other. And then when you ask the court, after paying I paid some $250,000, tax-free, by the way, to the mother of my children. And then when I went to the court and said, okay, I paid all this money, what are you going to do for me? She's, moving the children. She's taking them away from me. They don't call me. And none of that fazed them. If you don't get a call from your children, when people serving, serious prison terms are court ordered to have the children, contact their father or mother in prison. And yet here, a person that's never had a criminal, a conviction, never has had a charge whatsoever brought in front of any child protection agency. I think once you raise parental alienation, they're almost offended by it because they don't like the idea that they are supervising a process that inevitably will lead to parent alienation if you keep it in the courts too long. Now, this isn't just me, okay? The 2006 matrimonial report to New York's Chief Justice, they came right out with it. It was called the Miller Report. And in it, it was stated very clearly that you have to end these controversies early, whether it be divorce or family court. You can't let them, go on and on. The protracted cases, people get more incensed by the various allegations that go back and forth. It becomes a tactical, almost like a playground thing for lawyers. I compare it to the Roman Colosseum. Put your children in the middle of the arena, and then mom and dad go ahead and fight over, and then the two lawyers, like they're in a football game or something, or taking bets or whatever at the golf course. And they go back and forth with all these tactics. They're familiar with them. That's not new. And they virtually get entertained by what the parents are doing to each other. And then they blame it on the parents in the end as they walk away with every single thing in their bank accounts. They empty out their child, their college funds. They bankrupt them.
Leon, can I interrupt for just a
second? Sure.
The most bizarre thing, and I'm sure we're not the only ones. My sister, well, she was in the chat room. I'm not sure she's still here. She was. It's not a parent that has my niece. It's not a relative. It's nobody to her. It's just somebody who kidnapped my niece. That's the bottom line. My sister relied upon her. She said she was there to help. And as soon as she got my niece in her home, it began right away. It was so obvious what she did. So it's not even, it was a controversy in a divorce. She created a custody battle that didn't need to happen. It was an ACS case, but there was not a custody battle. She created it.
Okay,
That's what's freaking us out.
It almost sounds, Andrea, like almost like a kidnapping case.
It is a kidnapping, Leon.
Yeah, yeah. The more you relate, the more I'm drawing that conclusion.
Yeah, there's more to this. I mean, it was somebody that knew my sister had an issue with ACS, with educational neglect. My niece had chronic bronchitis. My sister worried a lot. Kept her home from school. She did just get her a tutor at that point. And this one person, and I use the term person loosely, she started calling my sister and feeding into it. And she would have things in common. Oh, my little girl was skinny too. None of this was true. She was buying my sister's confidence. And once my niece was taken, she offered to be the one to keep my niece until it was settled. Only from the day she took her, the alienation started right away. She worked hand in hand. It was the perfect storm. It fed into her craziness to do this. The ACS was more than glad to play along with it. It became a bit, it did. But my niece didn't know her. She hadn't seen my niece since she was 6 months old. So it took us a good we realized, we were told, she put in a call, it was leaked out. When she knew my sister was involved with ACS, she exacerbated it. We'd only found out, we weren't supposed to find out, but she placed a call to ACS to make the situation worse. And offered behind my sister's back, and offered my sister, her husband, to go with my sister to the child safety conference. And that's, exactly. It was a kidnapping.
Well,
it was played right into her hands.
Now, just for our listeners and our viewers, ACS is the Administration of Child Services of New York City. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, in the upstate New York, it's CPS, Child Protective Services.
Yeah, I know, it's CPS.
And I'm sure across the country they have similar, versions, right? But just so we know what we're dealing with.
Rose by any other name.
Right. It's for those who don't pay child support, and to get more and more, and I got mounds of information to show that this is all about the money. That shouldn't surprise anybody. It's not about the children. We're going to do this in the best interest of the child. Once they seize that mantra, they were off to the races. And in my book, I bring out a quote from Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf, where he stated that if you could convince the people that you're acting for the benefit of their children, that the children are a treasure, I think was the words that he used, then they will happily give up their rights. And we see that happening. And then suddenly, we have parents are all shocked because they're being called domestic terrorists now. It's a label that, the socialists or whatever have come up with, wherever that's coming from. And they use that now to suppress and censor government, people participation, which is at the core of our Constitution and our form of government. We are a self-governing nation. You'll see that in Supreme Court rulings all over the place. And this is their way of scaring and threatening and intimidating people. And then when parents went to the schools thinking they were doing all the right things, Mom and Dad, you should be more involved in your children's lives here at schools. You're not attending parent-teacher conferences and so forth. And then they do. They want to be more involved. They're labeled, domestic terrorists. That's something that is off the charts when I learned of it.
When did that come about? I just heard about that recently.
Oh, that was the Justice Department. It came out of a correspondence that somebody discovered and I think it wasn't supposed to be made public, and it came out of the Justice Department. Biden's Justice Department, his new Attorney General, and I believe he was questioned on that in an oversight committee hearing in Congress. I know because Senator Ted Cruz, in particular, I believe, as I recall, watching one of his attacks on the guest there that was under subpoena. I mean, he really.
Ted Cruz would attack anybody.
Oh yeah, right. But he did a good job. I mean, and I think, and it's for our benefit. So I don't care who's doing it or what their political persuasion is. I'm often confused for being on one end or the other.
I'm not a Merrick Garland fan. I have a lot of problems with him.
Well, Ted Cruz attacked him, and caught him. I mean, when I say caught him, I mean he cornered him on a lot of what he said, and a little overbearing. Ted Cruz, he can be that way. But I think it was good to see the Attorney General, the top law enforcement officer of our country, being called to task and being held accountable like that, because they feel they get to a point where they're above the law. We see that happening all the time. Arrests, prosecutions, investigations are going on all the time. I mean, don't you finally sit back? You hear everybody, Democrats, Republicans, and everybody in between. You find out all this corruption that's going on. Look at what happened to Andrew Cuomo. He's one of the best politicians. And look at what, he survived all these years, and they got to him too. But look at the corruption that's going on, Epstein and across the board. You have to conclude that everybody's corrupt after a while.
Yeah, that's what's so disheartening.
Right. And I don't know.
Baby,
right. And I don't know what.
Everybody was in on it.
Yeah. And I don't know what the answer is as far as reform goes. But, we did our part. When I say we, I mean many of the people I'm affiliated with. Like I say, Leon's library is growing. And I urge all of you to subscribe for updates right here. If you're on here, I see there's a lot of chat going on. That maybe, the more we can get on the subscriber list, the stronger we will be. And they need to see that, okay? And you'll get the updates on what's going on. You'll be surprised where we're going to be tomorrow and what's going to be with the topic, what we'll disclose that you won't learn mainstream media or elsewhere. We are dedicated to families. We are dedicated to America, our flag, our Constitution. And that's not going to change. You're not going to, well, you know what, there's a statement that, I read it at one of our programs, a gentleman that knew me. He's a former legislator, and he responded to another talk program in Philadelphia that my name had come up, and he cut in and said, I've known, Mr. Cozio for many years, and he commended not only my litigation skills as he had seen it personally, but as he had seen it on TV or anywhere else. And that ultimately, as a legislator in front of, he had heard, senators and Congress members actually state in one manner or another that they were targeting me, that they were not happy with what I was doing. And this is all behind closed doors, of course, but he came out publicly, and I learned of it for the first time just the other day when the attorney that runs that particular show, it's a YouTube channel. I don't think it's live, but he sent it to me. You ought to be aware of this, FYI. And then I read it, and I'm not going to read it here.
Oh, I know that channel.
Right. So in any event, he's a great guy. He did our video, which I'm going to play shortly because that was deprived of me Friday and Monday with whatever interference is going on. I didn't have it on. I don't know if I'm playing games with whoever is interfering. They did it on my Facebook. They did it on I used to get 2,000 reactions to my posts. Now I get nothing, 0. That's not an accident. It's not an accident. No, well, my website, leoncozio.com, and Facebook, because I have actually people that I don't know, never met, are reaching out to me and say, I'm trying to get a hold of you, and Facebook is blocking me. And I have 5,000 followers there. I want to get all of them to, get united behind this program, the CCAC, Leon's Library. I don't care what you call it, but the goal is very important, to provide a voice for parents that will be respected, and so that government will fear us instead of us constantly fearing others. There are so many who contact me after the fact. Well, I'm afraid, I don't want them targeting me like you,
Right. The government has to fear the people. Absolutely.
Right. Otherwise, it's
not that way.
No, otherwise it's tyranny. Democracy is where the government fears the people. You can throw them out of office. Tyranny is when the people fear the government. And I think we're making the move toward tyranny. We just don't see it. I mean, it's happening very systematically.
People are seeing it, Leo.
I agree.
I really do. I believe people are seeing it.
But what are they doing about it? I hear it.
Well, that's the other side of it. What are they doing about it? You got, what was that, Mario, what was his name? Salvo, you got to stop the machine.
Yeah. And
you got to stop the machine, and it has to be with people, with a rise up of the people, And no other way it's going to happen. They're not going to willingly give you back the power.
No, and parents in particular are targeted now, and the evidence is out there. This isn't just me. I was saying this 10 years ago, and I had all the evidence to back it up. That lawsuit that I gave the citation for, read it. It's a 45-page decision. That's a lot for a federal judge, and he systematically got rid of all of my arguments, systematically using all these obstacles. Domestic relations exception, deference practices, judicial immunity, state immunity, res judicata, preclusion rules, The list goes on, and they're all there. He got rid of every one of my claims, causes of action, and he did it in a professional manner. But there's no way.
But this was due to his own corruption.
No. I think what it came down to is he saw the sheer number of defendants that I had named, which I was required to do under the ex parte Young doctrine. I won't get into all that, but the bottom line is there's the 11th Amendment. You can't sue a state in federal court. And so the Supreme Court got around that because when the 14th Amendment came about later, after the Civil War, the Supreme Court was grappling with what do you do about, due process, which the people have said it applies, across the board to the states. Let's face it, what was the Civil War about? It was a war of the states, right? And how do you apply it to them if you can't sue in federal court? A person's not going to go to, a former Confederate state and sue down in Birmingham, Alabama or something, right? You see a lot of movies on that, so what they did is they said, okay, you have to sue the person in their individual and official capacities. And I won't get into all that. Read that case because it's just too much to lay out here. It's too complicated. And if you're a pro se litigant and you think you understand all that, knock yourself out. I'm not here to discourage you, but I'm not here to give you what you want to hear either. One thing I pride myself on is being candid. Look at all the things I've done to expose corruption, and very courageously so. And so, you have these lawsuits that people are filing, and their time would be better spent, for example, joining what we're doing. And because parents do not have a voice. Let's face it, you got special interests, you have bar associations. How about the big push with this Commission on Forensic Evaluations? I read a news article, I think it was the Albany Times-Union, and the argument was made, and several, including a psychiatrist. It was a virtual hearing, but I could hear all the speakers.
The argument against it.
Well, the argument was to abolish all forensic evaluations in divorce and family courts so that it can't be abused. I mean, I've heard estimates as much as $250,000 that parents spend to participate in all these forensic evaluations, psychiatric, if it's drugs and alcohol, that's different, but you got to have a lot behind that. You can't just, people are accusing others, especially over a custody case. They're just a lot of them are just making things up. And the victims have nowhere to go. And the judge just, what they're doing is they're abandoning their duties as a judge. They send it to some evaluator. It comes back, and there was a study done that the majority of these reports, the judges are simply adopting. So what happened to the judge, right? And so there are a lot of speakers that said abolish it. I was one of them. And then the article I read about that after those hearings, it was the only person that was mentioned as being opposed to the idea of abolishing forensic evaluations was, guess what? The American Psychiatric Association. So they have, the power they have. They contribute to campaigns. They come highly powered and well financed. What do parents have? And I ask any of you listeners, followers, even you, Andrea, anyone, tell me where the public interest group, the special interest group, the lobby group, the union, if you will, for parents. There is none. You got associations, and they have to be just the parents themselves united. Right, and I'm not just talking about a social organization or a networking group that maybe not even having a staff. Okay, that's not what I'm talking about. Those people throw up websites and then nothing is, a year goes by and no activity. Okay, and then they just walk away. I'm not talking about the one and outs. I'm talking about people like me, like Glenn Svoboda, who is I see he's on the program, or he's in the chat room here. He's been around for 30 years in these movements. I don't think there was any event that at least I've been to that he wasn't also there. I've been at it for 12 years, and so I'm not a one and out. There are many out there that have been involved for many years. Chris DiMaggio, who runs FIT TV out on Long Island, he did an early interview of me, and you'll still find that online. They're still involved, but they get worn out.
And what changes have happened that you've seen, Leon? Anything?
Yeah, I've seen it get worse. The courts are throwing out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
My point. Worse.
The federal courts, for example, aren't just throwing parents out, dismissing their cases and sending them back to the family courts and divorce courts that violated their rights. And saying, well, they're duty bound to observe the same Constitution I am. And unless you could come up with something very serious, I'm not going to hear your case. Even though, by the way, they do have the obligation under our Constitution, our federal Constitution. They are the ultimate arbiter, the ultimate safeguard, check valve for a violation of federal rights. Their very purpose, a federal court, their very purpose, protect federal rights. And then what they're doing, they're sending them back to the violators. It's like sending slaves back to the Confederate States. Okay, what they were doing at one time. That may not be the best of analogies, but you know what I'm trying to say. The point I'm making here is that I've seen it worse in the sense that not only are they dismissing, especially pro se litigants, and some of them come in with lawyers and then they go after their lawyers. I've seen that. You look at Cash Jackson, what he's going through.
Why, Leon? Is this all part of the corruption? I mean, why? Why are they sending them back?
Why
aren't they hearing them? If you say that they're the ones that are supposed to be, upholding the Constitution, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, well, they say, the state judges have the same, obligation. And again, unless you can show me something they're really seriously doing wrong, I won't take the case. And then there's all the other obstacles, by the way. And to answer your question, I believe, and I've seen this, okay, this should be no surprise. They look down on divorce and family courts. They don't want to be involved. If you look at the 2006 matrimonial report,
you have to look down because they're the cesspool of the system.
Well, yeah, but but there's proof to that. It's just not me. The Miller report, as it's called, in 2006 to the chief judge. Sandra Miller was a judge on the appellate division. I think it was second department, and she was chair of that commission. So they called it the Miller report. Alec Baldwin refers to it in his book, A Promise to Ourselves. And I read that report back in 2006. Okay, when I was just getting started with all this, because that's when my 2-year separation, which was going so well, uncontested divorce in 2004, suddenly the ex decided to go get a lawyer. Big mistake. I told her not to, but she did. And here we are, 15 years later in total disaster. But any event, they look at these and in that report, they did a survey of the judges. What do you think of divorce and family courts? And what came back is they call them punishment assignments. Quote unquote punishment assignments. So a federal judge, which is considered the elite court system in our nation, they're not going to get involved. They know better. They know that when you get involved in, these kinds of family crises, there's no winner. And so that's why I go back to where I've always been. I blame the lawyers. If the ethics lawyers are being allowed simply to resign after being caught falsifying their timesheets, who are you going to go? Ghostbusters? Where are you going to go to hold these lawyers accountable? And the overbilling practices are rampant in divorce and family courts. Now, there are over 300,000 lawyers in California and New York alone. And we're just...
I know there's an abundance.
Yeah, well, this lawyer glut, and they called it that when I was in law school, and that was a long time ago. This lawyer glut is so out of control. They got to find jobs for these people. And I don't think there's a better place for an easy job, a cush job, than divorce and family courts. Because my ex-secretary ran a divorce practice for like 5 years before they finally listened to me and they did arrest her and then she did go to jail. She was doing entire divorce cases and closing them, using my name, another lawyer in my office. And when we found out about it, never mind with the clients, because now you got a problem because those are not legitimate, matters. You have to dissolve it and start all over again.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. Just like, the falsely accused that end up, the Innocence Project. So, that's why, they look down on divorce and family court. They don't want to get involved in it. That's the true motive, I believe, for all these cases that are being thrown out. And then many who are just so stubborn, they have this high opinion of what they're going to accomplish, and then they end up with sanctions, fines. You could even go to jail for contempt if you defy a court order.
I'm sorry, Leon. Why would you go to jail for attempting if you do everything correctly and submit what you need to submit? What is if they? I understand if they don't want to take it on, if they reject it. But why would they hold you in contempt for trying?
Well, if you're pro se, you tend to be at home, and when you're at home, in the comfort of your keyboard environment, there's nobody there to police you. You get pretty excited with the verbiage that you use, and some of the ones I've seen. Let me tell you, I read one the other day that, and this came from a lawyer actually, and wrote that. And hadn't been, this is not a person that was a litigator, never been to court, okay? And I came across one headline, and it said that the headline was that the United States, words to this effect, the United States was a terrorist organization or a terrorist government or something against foreign governments. That's not going to go over well. I won't get into that. No, and come on, you can't take your own country like that. Let's face it, we're not perfect, but I mean. Right. But my point is they and then if you're pro se, you get all excited, you write all this stuff, it comes into court. The judges don't even want to deal with it. See, those guys, they don't even, if they even file it right, they never will come in front of a judge, like an actual argument. They don't want to, the judges don't want to sit in open court with all these lawyers on these very sophisticated cases, and then here's some pro se litigant come in and complain about the whole world is bad, look what my ex did, and all this other stuff. They don't want to.
So you'd have to come in, you'd have to have the right angle.
Yeah, but
I agree that you wouldn't want to just make the same argument you'd be making, in the real argument, the thing that you are trying to resolve. But I understand that sometimes you have to come in a back door, maybe you have to point out something else they're doing wrong, besides just that they're doing your case wrong. I mean, you have to get a little creative sometimes, right?
Well, no, absolutely. Come on, let's face it. You look at the Supreme Court, for example, the flowery language that they use sometimes. They love going out and getting quotes from, the Greeks and other things, and they come up with their own things, and they want to see if it flies. How will the media handle it? I mean, you got Senator Joe Bruno. He's deceased now, but when he was the majority leader of New York Senate for like 2 or 3 decades, and he made a quote in his book, which I also have, and it's called Keep Swinging. It came out in 2017. He was prosecuted by a federal judge in Albany, one that later was my judge, okay? And I exposed how that particular judge, Gary Sharp, in Albany, in the case of United States versus Ccac, was actually condemned by the Federal Appeals Court in Manhattan because he came up with, and I'm not making this up, you can look it up, okay? United States versus Ccac, it's a 2011 case. It went up through the system. And the Federal Appeals Court on appeal removed him from the case. When they sent it back, they reversed it unanimously because Judge Gary Sharp had found that there was a human gene that won't be discovered for 15 years, or no, 50, won't be discovered for 50 years, and he used it to sentence somebody. Now that's, in my view, that's like Hitler-esque, right? Isn't that what Hitler did? He used genetics to, right. So I made that argument, that might be considered extreme, right? No, I don't think it that way, but you can imagine what their reaction was. They didn't even bring it up in any decision. None of my, by the way, so many arguments, constitution arguments I raise, whether it be a reinstatement case, family court case, these people never even brought it up, or if they did, they misrepresented it. They were not interested in constitutional rights. That's why I continued to go back to federal court and say, look, you sent me back and look what happened. They don't deal with it then. They don't even mention it. So how's the public supposed to know what my arguments were? In other types of cases I've litigated over the years, the judge comes out, he says, well, here's what the plaintiff is arguing, here's what the defendant is arguing, and here's what I think, okay? And like I say, parent versus state is a 45-page opinion. Very sophisticated, very well researched, okay, high level, and I cite that because if you're pro se and you think you can beat that, and if you think you can overcome all those obstacles, knock yourself out. I'm not going to... Look, I don't even know you. You know what I mean? But if you want to...
If you're fighting a losing battle in the regular, like in my instance, let's say the Kings County Family Court, the die is cast. There's no doubt about it. It's just the way it is.
Right.
I guess there comes a point where, somebody just feels, well, I have to pull the stop set. I have to try something.
Well, you know what? Sadly, Andrea, what they end up doing is violence, okay? And when you shut the courthouse doors, remember that's an underpinning of our Constitution. The courts are supposed to come between, are supposed to be the places where we resolve our conflicts civilly. And when you remove that, when you throw people out of court, and nowadays you asked the question earlier, since you got involved, Leon, has it gotten better or worse? It's not only gotten worse, but now I've seen some opinions, shocking, where they actually ridicule the pro se plaintiff. And I'm not talking about a repetitive plaintiff. I'm talking about where they come out and they actually make fun of the guy. Oh, he thinks he could get into this court, in a sophisticated way. I can't believe I'm reading some of these opinions. And so, you look at, I mentioned Judge Gary Sharp in Albany, right? He was one of the ones that really came after me big time, okay? Now, he was removed from that case, United States versus Ccac, because, again, he discovered a gene, and now they call him the gene theorist, if you look him up online, But he was removed from that case, and when he became when he was about the same year that United States Ccac was being litigated, he was also presiding over Senator Joe Bruno's case for a variety of, bribes, federal crimes involving his role as a Senate leader over, how many years. And ultimately, Joe Bruno was found not guilty. He never did any time. He was never convicted in the end. I mean, he had to go through appeals and all these other things. I'm not going to get into all that. But what he wrote in his book, and it's quoted in my book, Whistleblower in Paris, at the end of my first chapter, he writes that the citizenry, if they would all ever get involved, they would learn that judges and prosecutors care more about a splash in the media than they do about justice. Okay, words to that effect. And this is coming from a very powerful figure that has gone through a number of governors. I mean, if anybody knows lawyers, it's him. He's not a lawyer. I'm sure he's not a lawyer, as I recall. But in any event, here's a guy, and he's passed away. I think he was pushing 90 years of age. And he's coming out with a statement like that. So when we make these kinds of comments, we're not off, and I don't think that anybody who is concerned about their case or the corruption that's going on should think that they're, extreme or they isolate you, they get you paranoid or whatever. No, be strong, be proud of yourself. You're a good American. You love your children. You're protecting them. You're promoting the rights that are a God-given right, not just a God-given right, but protected by the Constitution. The Supreme Court of the United States has repeatedly stated that the parenting interest, the parenting right, is the oldest interest protected by our Constitution. Troxel versus Granville, year 2000, that made it clear. That was first stated in 1923. So, this is a right that if we don't protect it, we're going to lose it. We see it happening. Leaps and bounds even.
Nobody in the upper echelon of government. I don't know any senator. Look, when you did your march to Washington thing there, and you said you had some. I don't know if you didn't speak really. You weren't in front of Congress. I don't think but you addressed. I think you mentioned something that you had addressed some of the representatives.
Well, we did.
You did have an audience with.
Well, this is a great question. See, that's why it's great to have a conversation like this. Because from it, I can respond and recollect things that are very important to. You're hearing things here for the first time, and it's good stuff. Okay, you won't learn about it elsewhere. But in answer to that question, Andrea, I could tell you instances where I was going down one of the hallways of the Senate Dirksen building, whatever it was. Okay, and there was a Judiciary Committee hearing, and out pops. A senator from South Carolina, right? And he's always on the news, and he's going down the aisleway, and I ran up to him, and I spoke to him, and I said, "Here's our report. You need to read it." And he took it, and we had a very brief chat, and he stuck it in his suit jacket, and then he walked into the elevator. Now, where are you going to get that? Hanging around with your computer, your keyboard, or hanging around at a local coffee shop? We made things happen because we were that determined. And it was obviously, we weren't like the group that was pounding down the doors. They don't mention the liberal groups that were pounding down the doors of the Supreme Court back during when Trump got first elected in January, whatever that was, 2016. But, both extremes, okay, are committing, violent acts or, acts. I don't care what anybody, you don't invade our Capitol. You don't knock down the doors of our Supreme Court. I don't care who you are or what your mission is, you don't do that. There's so many places and so many rights you can do that in so many other locations. And that's just the way it is. That's democracy. You're not going to win every time.
But you gave this senator, you don't remember, you said it was South Carolina, but you don't recall who it was in the thing. I'm just curious.
Oh, yeah. Jesus, just he escapes him right now, but
I don't know. I'm trying to.
Oh, geez, it's on the tip of my tongue. But in any event, I'll remember it for tomorrow. But
I'm saying, in whoever had any of this information, whoever was given or spoken to or handed anything, what have any of them done?
Well, nothing. That's the thing. I never.
Nancy Schaefer, correct? I'm sure.
Yeah, Nancy Schaefer. Yes. Yep. Yeah, she was supposed to speak with me at a conference, public in Washington D.C. We were both keynote speakers, and she never made it because of a murder suicide involving her husband of 52 years, and that was suspicious, investigated.
They called it a murder. People don't really believe it, but whatever. We don't know.
Well, there was a lot of investigation about it because there was a big foul cry sort of thing, and she had just published a book, just like I just did, and I make that point in my book where if it could happen to her, what should I expect? This is not, when you go after the gold mine as she did, she was challenging child protection services and the corruption that was going on there. So whether, it was a true murder suicide or whether something else was going on there, that became, a subject that is still unresolved today. In fact, at the Parent March, we had a group that was dedicated just to her, believe it or not, demanding, this is 9 years later, they were demanding an investigation of the Nancy Schaefer murder. Okay. Senator Lindsey Graham, by the way, is the one from South Carolina. Yeah.
I'm not a fan of Senator Graham.
I understand that, but we got a call coming in. Let me take this call, and I'm glad you asked those questions because it really allowed me to open up and tell you more. So, and you can always call back. Okay, Andrea, thanks for being a supporter. Bye-bye. Hello, you're on Leon's library. Go ahead.
Hello.
Yes. Is this Glenn?
Yeah, just checking in. If you want me to go on, I'll go on, but I know Martha's talking.
You're on right now. You're live. Everybody can hear you right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, how are you, everybody? How are you, Leon?
This is Glenn Svoboda. I mentioned him earlier. He's on the administrative side of our Citizen Commission Against Corruption. And I'm always happy to see him come on because he always has a lot to offer. And he was at our Parent March on Washington, which I want to address shortly. And I've not been allowed those 2 days that I had the screen up. I guess I was briefly interrupted, but I managed to get around it. So it's here in case we can get to it. I don't know if time will allow, but yeah, Glenn, you've heard a lot about what we were discussing. I'm sure you've been on the chat here for some time. Do you, when we went to Washington and you were there, the lobby day that we had meetings, you were there with the group, the New York contingent, in Senator Chuck Schumer's office. That was when he was minority leader. Now he's the majority leader. We had a packed conference room and all of us had reports and we addressed them. We never got a response. They promised one. We even got the cards to prove it, where they told us to contact this number and how to get through to them. And yet there was no response. What do you attribute that to? I mean, we did everything right. We did a peaceful protest. You heard Stephen Boyd yesterday and his involvement and how, he headed up the candlelight vigil on our last day in front of the Capitol on the lawn. Beautiful event. But all these things, what do you attribute it to? Why do you think all those reports we delivered, all those things we did over a 3-day stretch, police escort down Pennsylvania Avenue for 2 miles. We had all those lanes, set aside for us. You were there. What do you attribute that to? Why do you think they're not responsive to something as crucial as parenting rights?
Well, the first thing I'd like to say for everyone, I'm John Doe. My phone is coming up, John Doe. I can't straighten that out. But, Leon, I've been doing this since about 1995. We went in, of course, with the original Father's Rights movement. It's all we had out going, as you mentioned, with Chris DiMaggio. We used to get buses, go out and go to Albany, and we would try to address, of course, we addressed Chuck Schumer, and to obviously no avail. This is over 30 years obviously, you know, the judiciary in New York is very corrupted. It's corrupted beyond recognition. It's just, they'll never, ever say to fix anything. You know, one thing many of us have to remember from the impeachment trials with Donald Trump, Chuck Schumer was stupid enough to say on the national TV, the judiciary has 100 ways to cut you up. You understand? And that's why none of these people talk about the judiciary. They will not go after the largest private special interest group in the United States, maybe the world, and that's the Trial Lawyers Association. The lawyers, the Bar Association runs every industry you could imagine. Let's not forget the child support debit cards at Bank of America. Bank of America would be very happy to seize your account for child support. I mean, I'm getting a little bit off the subject, what's happening, but they never will talk about it. Look, right now I deal with my local politician up here, Chris Page. He's a Republican. They will not, on any of their posts, mention anything about family court. We're all pounding them.
No, that's true.
I'm from Suffolk County. I mean, I know Lee Zeldin very, very well. For probably 15 years, he was a local in Shirley, Mastic, and Mastic Beach in Suffolk County. That's where the Flight 800 Memorial is. These guys have heard us complain about family courts for at least a decade and a half or longer. They don't mention it. They'll never mention it. I just want to bring up something. I know the other fellow on Date's a little upset about the lawsuit, the federal lawsuit. You know, look, I've heard these stories, like what you're trying to explain to this gentleman, Leon, many, many years ago, before I had gray hair, before I was in my 60s. And I heard these stories. People, you got to understand, there's been so many lawsuits over the decades. Massive. They're going on monthly. And they get tossed out one after the other. I hope, Leon, we can get a billboard and really make hell with this judiciary, because we definitely can make hell with that. I mean, we've tried everything else under the sun to go after these criminals. They shut us down. I'm sending your posts out. They're coming up, not available. Every night I share. I get 5 shares limited. There's a group there, Joe Gormley, you mentioned him in New Jersey. They're on right now. They were watching your show, and then they had to start their own show at 7:30. Look, we're all pounding the pavement today, so we're not going to get anywhere unless, we try to follow. Leon, look, I follow you because you've been able to get things done over the decades. So that's why I follow you, because at the end of the day, Leon Koza will do it all by himself, and I am for that. And I love everyone else that's doing their lawsuits also. They got a big mouth. Everybody, you got to have a big mouth. You got to attack these criminals in the court often. And please, we're not knocking you down. Leon's telling you the truth. Watch these cases. I mean, I'm from Suffolk County. You got to understand with Justine of Alba. I mean, you got to understand Justina worked at Rikers Island. They all knew the Epstein case. You understand? I mean, this is all tied into the whole Eastern District with this child pedophilia ring. I mean, this is what's going on with these courts. This is the cover-up that's going on in these courts. I never would have believed in all of these decades I've been doing it, the child trafficking that's going on with these criminals that are employed in this court. And I'm going to go after the sheriff's department. I got to call a spade and something. That's how they get paid. They go after this Title 4 deal also. That's how these people get paid. They're thugs.
Well, you mentioned these lawsuits, and so I give a citation. I don't get personal with anyone that's out there trying to, protect their rights and their children. I emphasize I'm your ally. I'm not your adversary here. But by the same token, I'm not going to stand by while you damage yourself. I have a simple question for all those pro-sayers who are going to be filing these lawsuits with all the, the terminology that they think will attract attention, federal, class action, all these things. The complications of that are just off the charts. In any event, the thing I ask is simple. Tell me one case that was successful. One in all these years, decades now. Tell me one case where a pro se litigant went into federal court and was able to have a case litigated and then to fruition, to success. I don't even know of one that actually got past the pleading stage. In other words, where they actually got in front of a judge. I've seen a lot get pounded, and I'm one of them, by the way. So I don't get excited about my citation. I don't get excited about telling what I went through because it's not pleasant. I was beat up a lot. My simple point is, if it happened to me, what makes you special? What makes you think after, 7 years of law school, 25 years as a litigator, not just as a paper pusher, but as a guy that did trials in federal and state court? When I invalidated the $1 billion casino compact, and I referenced that a lot because when they tax someone, they can take away your license, they can take away your credibility, they can beat you up, like as I mentioned earlier with these decisions and so forth, where they don't even mention what you're arguing. Then but they can't take away your accomplishments. And so how is it that, 15 years ago, I was able to invalidate a $1 billion compact against some of the most prominent, powerful law firms in our country? And it's all there. It's in the record. You could look it up. In a case, I cite both the federal and the state case. And maybe in my post submission, in preparation for tomorrow's site, I will put those citations on there. So how is it that I was successful in those arenas, and it was able to continue in state court where I was ultimately successful, and then prevent the powers to be in federal court from putting an injunction on it? They tried to. There was an injunction for a while, or at least a restraint on the part of the state judge. Again, it gets complicated, but I was successful. Okay, in my situation, and you do mention, I have had some successes. Okay, I got a gag order removed in 2016 that was placed on my website. And it was right after that all of these mysterious, suppressions and antics and technical issues started happening with all of my sites and everything else. And I had that removed in New York Supreme Court. But remember how that happened. The judge, after denying all my motions, stepped down from the case and dismissed it on his own motion without any arguments, without any change in the record. And I think it was highly influenced. Many of the folks down in New York that were followers and leaders, with me at the time, were going to come up by train, and we were going to do a protest in front of that courthouse when that particular case was going to come before a state Supreme Court judge. I sued a family court judge who had issued the gag order. And then, they erased it all such that there was nothing left to argue, and it was declared moot. And then the higher judge simply, dismissed on his own accord. These are the politics that are played. I've seen so much of this behind closed doors. In my view, I've said it in my book, would not have happened without discussion behind the scenes. And I wasn't there, so I can only tell you what I surmised. But the outcome, sometimes tells you enough. In any event, the Parent March on Washington, we experienced a lot of the trolls and interferences that were trying to destroy that event. And we pressed on. You're one of them, and many others. Stephen Boyd, you guys know what I went through. And ultimately, I had to clean up a lot of things that people just did not do. I had to get the permits. I had to get the hotel. As a gentleman was supposed to get those, couldn't find one. He was coming up with quotes of $15,000, to get the ballroom. I was able to do it at a fraction of that amount. And maybe a lot of that is persuasion, how you approach it, whatever. But we got it done. And that's a point I want to make here. I made it before. The two that I had to cancel or had to erase, the Friday and Monday sessions, the only two that really could not go forward because of the tampering, it had to do with will be, hopefully I can get on a monitor, but it had to do with the Parent March. And what is important for me to emphasize here, Glenn, and to all the people who are either going to watch this on the video after the fact on this site, or who are listening and watching right now. It's not about what we're doing at this moment. It's about what we could become down the road. This is what they fear. And if you nip it at the butt early, you can walk away from it, and everybody else does. And no media coverage, nothing. And this is what I think they're trying to do. And I know they're doing it, okay? If this is YouTube, okay? And let's face it, anything that goes through satellite, monitoring devices, internet, let's face it, Facebook, come on, Zuckerman and company, they can tamper with these things. The use of logarithms. I had an expert tell me how he believes that they kiboshed my Facebook following. Again, one time, 2,000 people would react. Now I get 0 or 3 or 4, and I got people corroborating that are contacting me. I can't get through to you and what have you. The Parent March on Washington was common. This live talk show and the march on here were at the same time. And that's the other thing they fear. When I say they, I'm talking about the beneficiaries of divorce and family court, service providers, lawyers, the gold mine. And my mission is don't hire the lawyers. And if you do, monitor them and keep close tabs as to what they're doing. Don't allow their overbilling practices. Mediate, resolve, settle it. If you truly love your children, you will work together and solve this thing, not fight like animals in the Roman Colosseum, as I've explained. I know how lawyers can do it. They did it to my ex-wife, and she fell for it. You know, she's not a lawyer, but hey, she knew better, and look what the outcome is. I don't want to see that happen to other people. You know, I fell victim to it as a whistleblower. The Whistleblower in Paris is all about my ordeal, but it's also heavily explanatory of what is occurring here that I couldn't possibly do in a show like this. But they feared that a Parent March on Washington, if it grew, and to the point where, like, what we did it professionally, it was peaceful. You can't deny that. They fear something like that grows into an annual event, which is, you know, that's what we were planning at the time. Now they got a problem because now it gets out of control. They can't control it anymore. You can do what you want on Facebook and whatever, but there are too many people involved and communicating, and now you got a problem. Now you got to listen to us. Now you're no longer this power base that's just having entertainment with the litigants and taking their money and not doing any reform, the window dressing commission. So I think that's important to mention, and why I want to finally, if I can get this done today, I want this, even if not so much for those who may have been at the march or whatever, it's important to know what we did, how we did it, and so that we could do it again, because we got to do something next year. Or even in the winter, maybe in the way of a conference. I'm up for it, but I can't do it alone. I can't do it without the funding. We did it for under $500, but I had to get several thousand from my own supporters and so forth, private people, former clients and so forth, to make up the difference and pay all the costs that we got hit with, but we got it done. And many of the speakers out on the Capitol lawn in the afternoon, right after the march concluded on the last day, I mean, you heard those people, Glenn. They were they were from all over the country, and they were talking about this is the core passing. One of the women leaders of a group, moms, custodial moms, something like that. And she was very much about, this is great. You know, I don't feel isolated anymore. I don't feel alone. I feel like fellow victims, and we are working together finally. And then the pandemic hit, and a lot of other things, and we never were able to do the second or third annual. So let's do it next year if we can get enough.
I have to say, I mean, listen, I got to comment on this because right now, the way this country is gone, we watched with Anthony Sabelli, Cass Jackson, Frank Hand, and many others, BLN from Arkansas. The American Indians, by the way, the American Indians are appalled at Black Lives Matter and what they're trying to do. The American Indians have gotten their throat cut, all of their land stolen from them, and really make the American Indians almost extinct. So they protested against the Black Lives Matter. They were treated like trash recently, and what they learned. What I learned from watching these fellows going to D.C. that they're setups to destroy your organization. I mean, you all have to understand, Lee, and I'm very afraid at this point, if we do this again, that somebody will set you up and make it a disturbance. And I would not want to do that without an insurance policy, because right now we had nothing happen. I have to tell you what I've witnessed. The planting, the setups, this country is gone. What I'm trying to say to you, okay, this country is gone. I got no faith in it. They're even destroying I'm watching these murder trials and the shooting, and all these shootings, all these armory trials that are going on. This government has told us you can't trust it for them. Be careful what your next plan is, because I see sabotage on the agenda. They're sabotaging us already. 2019, we were able to get away with this. Right now, they doubled down. They destroyed our president of the United States. They shut him off of Facebook. Well, you can't trust anything that this country is going through right now, please. We don't trust the DOJ. We don't trust the FBI. and we don't trust the CIA. We have to be honest with each other. Listen, I don't care if you like Donald Trump or you don't, but I can tell you one thing. I watched 2016. I watched the Democrats destroy Bernie Sanders. Okay? So that was the end of what I've seen any last-ditch justice in this country, blatantly urinating it out our face, telling us it's right. So be careful what you're doing. I'm telling you, I hope we could get a billboard. I wanted to get a billboard. Some of these billboards are big money because, Leon, you would be able to defend that in court. You would be spending all of your time defending and fighting that. I'd love to do this thing in D.C. Don't think I wouldn't. I just smell massive corruption when we move forward on it. They're going to try to sabotage us as much as they can, because the bottom line is there's a lot of criminals with black robes, and they're dirty, filthy clerks. I want to thank the other gentleman a few posts ago, a few of your podcasts ago, going after the clerks. And I'm so glad he brought that, because yes, a lot of these clerks are real pieces of trash. These are civil service employees that are criminals working in these courthouses. Listen, by the way, they're stealing people's property. I mean, when we had the ring in Suffolk County, we seen the pattern of the divorces in the family court. Their houses go into distress. These judges, they make them go year after year until the house is in foreclosure. These criminals are buying houses. I mean, these were in the federal courts. I was watching it in the federal court. There's a big white one. There's a big skyscraper in Central Islip. You go past it, you understand? I mean, they throw these cases out, but these criminals in the courts, that's what they do all day. They can't make money in the bank anymore, so that's what they're doing. So listen, besides the pedophilia, the trafficking of children, the CPS putting kids in foster care, all the money laundering that these criminals working in these courts and around the social services, they're into all kinds of shit. So please, I mean, be careful what's going on. I am in fear. Look, I got black girls. Everyone out there knows. Many of you heard Carlos Rivera. Many of you heard James Kelly. Many of you heard a famous show, which was Long Island Backstory with Gary Jacobs, who went silent. I ended up with their judge right after I went with Leon to go talk about, in 2019, to go talk about the parenting event. And 2 weeks later, I went from Judge James Quinn, to 2 weeks later, to Judge Cheryl Joseph, the bigot that destroyed the other famous people that are well known throughout the United States. I got stuck with that judge. That judge, September 29, blackmailed me.
Well, you're going to tomorrow again. We're going to have a guest that went through a horrific ordeal, and he's going to bring out some new stuff dealing, especially with judicial immunity. That should be a fascinating program. So don't forget tomorrow, 7:30, same YouTube channel and everything else. But you know what, Glenn, I couldn't agree with you more. I don't think it eluded me that they're not going to target, our event and plant people to try to create a problem. Yeah, there's no doubt that could happen. But what argues against that, and these are all the thought processes that I go through. If I feel even close to the event that there's something like that occurring or developing, I'll just cancel it. Not that I would want to, but there were a couple of times, in 2019 where I came close to doing exactly that. But we did go forward, and sometimes you just have to have courage. That's the American way. I mean, you have people that sacrificed their lives, 58,000 men, not women. There were 8 women, but over 58,000 men who gave up their lives in Vietnam. And for what? Isn't that the question we ask today? And now they're suffering Agent Orange and everything else. We just celebrated Veterans Day, and we see suicides occurring. I'm familiar with too many of them, and posted on my website, leonkozio.com, the Purple Heart's Final Beat video, which has been around since 2009. A very emotional one. You should check that one out. But in any event, I recognize the risk, but I can't fear my government when others have sacrificed a lot more than anything I'm doing here. I sacrificed a lot, yes, but I'm still here, and I had a great life. I'm proud to be an American. I'm very grateful for what this country has given me. My dad spent 5 years in a Nazi concentration camp. Okay. we're seeing a lot, and I defended and represented a lot of civil rights victims. Among the first sexual harassment cases in upstate New York in my area, it was a case that I took on. This is back when Clarence Thomas was under fire in the early 90s. And I took that case, and the first decision, we didn't have jury rights for civil rights cases involving sexual harassment at the time. Then Congress passed an enactment and gave the jury right, go figure, right after my case had concluded. But in any event, the judge originally ruled against us. We appealed it. The Federal Appeals Court in Manhattan unanimously reversed it, sent it back. And the same judge, on the same record, without another trial, reversed himself. That was front page news back in the day. And you offend judges that way too, because he took it on the chin, so to speak, and then ruled in our favor. And and it gets even more fascinating later when the loser, the factory owner, was referred to me, and he came into my office, and we actually brought a malpractice action against his lawyer for losing the case to me. I know that sounds wild, but it did happen, and we won the malpractice case as well. That's all in my book and explained. But crazier things have happened, but I don't know, that's pretty crazy there. A lot of stories are told. As we go on with this program, you're going to hear a lot of real life stories. And this is not John Grisham. This is not something you'll see on TV. This is not the court shows and whatever that you find there. This is real life stuff. And so I agree with you that there is certainly a lot of risk. I appreciate your concern for me, and I certainly respect the risks that you took as well. But I think we have to do something. And I want to try to play that for people just because it did not get the media coverage it deserved. It did not get the reactions and the responses, no oversight hearings from Congress that we had asked for. But we can't stop demanding a Justice Department investigation into the human rights violations of divorce and family courts and oversight hearings in Congress regarding the abuse of Title 4D federal funds in these courts. Okay, this is federal money, and they're creating conflict to bring more money into these courts. That's all laid out, much of it in my book. What an educational device that is. And I think you get it for like $10 when you download it or whatever. It's on Barnes and Nobles. You'll find it. Amazon gave it a 5-star rating. It's published by Author House. You can go look them up on their website and all the major bookseller sites. So you can get Whistleblower in Paris at any major site, but it is so educational. And there's also intrigue. What happened to me when I had to go out to Paris and look for international protection when they ganged up on me so viciously that I had to protect myself. But in any event, so we have to press on, and we have to have something as a strategy. If all we do is say, okay, well, they're going to target us, let's all give up, then we're all going to be on our keyboards from the comfort of our homes, going back and forth to one another, and we're all congratulating one another or sympathizing with one another, and that's all well and good. It's great therapy, but that's not going to solve. Yeah. Yes. Yes, I agree. I agree with you, Glenn. I agree with you. Yeah, Satan's Docket, 2017 publication, yes. But I incorporated a lot of that into this more recent book. This more recent book is not as long, more efficient, I would think, and it brings up a lot of those horrific events that happened since that publication. You know, the events in 2018, the shoot on sight warrant, and how that all came about. So there is just a lot of intrigue there that is better produced, I should say, better written, whatever you want to call it. I was able to spend more time with the pandemic and all. But again, it's something that's educational, intriguing, entertaining, really, for those who, spend time on this instead of being on your keyboards all the time, because whatever, this could be very effective. So what I want to do now, Glenn, you can either, stay with me or you could just continue. I'm going to try to get this parent march on Washington. If you want to comment as we go along, you're welcome to, but I want to get this on the record so it'll be part of one of our videos, because I was denied this on Friday and Monday, and I'm going to try it again. Now, this is this guy here, I call him Sir Charles. We have a very dedicated follower who made some comments about, the backdrop and making it look even more professional and fix up and, the table, which I polished, and I did got a new chair, to make it look respect for you folks and to make it look even better. I appreciate the input. I thought that was really kind of neat. But any event, so this I call Sir Charles after that gentleman, and but I'm going to remove him, set him down. I'm not saying he was hiding the monitor here, but maybe you could think he was. But I'm going to see if I can get that parade on, and I'm going to do it in such a way that I could encourage people to find it on it's online. Actually, you can find it on not only my site, but you can find it on the site that attorney Lawrence DeMarco does in Philadelphia. And you can find it on my website. You can find it, let me just take a minute here. I got the wrong mouse. I'm not the best at this, but I've become pretty good over the years considering. So let's see if I can get this to engage. Okay, it's coming on. But in any event, there is just so much to address. We can't possibly do it in the time allotted so far, but we can over time. And I think that's my goal is here. And once we get, you'd be surprised at some of the people who might get on the program or follow it and then call me. A lot of people call me after the fact or get on my gosh, here we are playing with this again.
There's so many podcasts that are going on as I'm speaking right now. I mean, from Colorado to New Jersey to Long Island. I mean, they're all podcasts. They're all going on the same.
They are, right, but
from Maryland.
Right.
I mean, they all watch you what's going on. So let's see how this works. I'd love you to, first off, look, we want to make sure we got a good PA system next time, not these little small.
No, I agree. No, I totally agree with you. Yes. Yes.
Thanks to Judge Cheryl Joseph, I lost everything again the second time in my life. So I'm starting over again. But look, we're going to make sure that we got a nice PA system, and we can cut somebody that keeps running on talking. You understand? We got two microphones.
That's right.
We'll shut them off, and we'll continue. So that's how we're going to do it. We're not going to play the games that we went through in Albany that time. But,
No, the Albany thing was terrible. That was poorly, right, yeah.
We work with Joe Gormley, the fatherhood initiative.
Yeah.
I hope we can work together. These guys from New Jersey are great. Obviously, New Jersey and New York are connected very well. Any kind of changes in the family court would have to be connected from New Jersey to New York.
Well, we get things from all over the country. I mean, we had people who participated who were from all over the country. The one gal, as you might remember, she couldn't make it. She got it all the way to Ohio and then eventually was wired the money to finish her trip. The commitment there was so impressive to me. And the people who attended leaves me with no reason to accept any excuse that anybody couldn't make an event like this. And you're right. We will alter it to the modern times. We're not just going to go blindly into something without addressing what's going on around us. But I'm going to engage this because I was able to get it up. Maybe I'll finally get this done. And I want to show people what we have going here. And I'm going to remove this, and hopefully people will be able to hear it. So you can see it in here. Actually, what's going to happen is you're going to see the screen, but you're not going to see the see the actual. You're going to see some figures in the background. It'll be very bright. You won't be able to actually see the video in its proper quality. But the idea here is, in addition to the technical issues I still got to work out, the idea is to get you to watch the full video. It is beautiful. It's a beautiful, it's only 15 minutes. It's amazing how this attorney DeMarco was able to do this. I mean, he saw what we were doing. He shows up in Washington, and then he decides to do this video. And I thought he did such a great job. And I guess he's a bit of a amateur, video producer and documentary producer, and I think he's great. But in any event, I'm going to play this and stop it along the way and explain what is happening. You'll hear things. You won't be able to see it all clearly, but you'll be enough here to encourage you to watch the whole video and then to join us in some kind of event next year, or maybe over the winter. We'll come up with something on this show, and we'll go from there. So I'm going to start this now, and Glenn, you could join in when I break. I'll stop periodically and maybe at some points where you're there and you might be able to comment. But so there's two of us that were at this. Steve Boyd was at it. He was our speaker our guest last night. And tomorrow we will have a guest that was also at this event. And he was one of our expert speakers, Professor Pappas. Okay, so let's play this. Liberty State Park. What a great place to start a movement like this. The place where we started at Liberty State Park. We did a caravan from there to Washington. Thank you for coming here today, which is going to promising to be tremendous. The first night, what we did is the first day, it was a Wednesday, May 1st, we had a group that got together at Liberty State Park, which is right there by the Statue of Liberty across the New York Harbor from Manhattan. And people put signs on their vehicles and so forth, and we proceeded down the interstate to Washington. I was there at Liberty Park, and we were communicating back and forth by our cell phones, iPhones, and so forth, and we're able to talk about what we were doing and encouraging one another. It was just great to be able to talk to people as we're traveling, whatever it was, the 4 hours or 5, whatever it was, from New York City to Washington. So now here we are, the night of that first day, and there's a planning session. And look at the two characters there, myself and Glenn Svoboda, right there next to me, and he's on live on our call-in line right now. So let's. I'm narrating this, and somehow what Attorney DeMarco did is he took the narration and carried it over to the whole event, and then so you'll hear me talking, and he took it and pasted it into all these different events, and they lined up beautifully. Again, I don't know how he did it, but this is a great 15-minute video. And this 3-day event in Washington, D.C. We're here about action. We're cut off what's been happening in Marshall. Now, this is the New York contingent in Senator Chuck Schumer's office. Glenn was referencing that earlier, and there's Glenn in the background. There's Jim Kelly. There's Carlos. There's the whole gang of people that, Jim Ginther from Staten Island, Professor Pappas there from Queens, New York, the gal that was actually in a wheelchair at the back of the parade, and the police escort we had, they were patient enough, and there we all are outside of Senator Chuck Schumer's office, and we had just got done with our conference. This was the second day, the middle day, the lobby day as we called it, May 2nd of 2019. A 3-day event entitled, quote, Parent March on Washington, end quote, is underway in our nation's capital on May 1, 2, and 3, 2019. Its goal is to shift focus from parent-child separations at our borders to parent-child separations here among Americans in our nation's divorce and family courts, also known as parental alienation. Now here we are, a whole group of us going down the halls of Congress. There's Steve Boyd in the background, Rosa, Jim Ginther, there's Jim Kelly up front there too. So there's the whole gang of us. We're going from office to office, delivering the reports that we put together and approved beforehand, and to show that this wasn't just a march down the street. It was very well organized. It wasn't just a bunch of people in sandals with a bullhorn. The human rights violations in these courts are far more insidious because children are being programmed to hate their moms and dads while avoiding them permanently. The attached report entitled, quote, Federal Funding Epidemic, end quote, explains how this is occurring. A second report, which we call, quote, the Melissa Report, end quote, puts a face on this epidemic through select ordeals from... Now see, these are some of the signs. Now this one says Family Court Kills. I can't read what's underneath it, but this is a website. There's another one about fatherlessness. There's another one, I think it's parental alienation, but these are homemade signs, and they were very impressive. Some of the statements, the slogans, or what have you, they were on there. They were very impressive to me. And we had I had these yellow shirts made up, with, so that we were all in when we went out on the parade march. That we were in synchrony. That was, I think, very effective because it draws attention, and then people get curious, ask you what you're doing, and that's how you get noticed. The millions which exist across the states. We're asking Congress and the Justice Department to conduct oversight hearings and investigate the human rights violations occurring as a result of this funding epidemic. Every state or district in the United States is likely represented among the participants of this 3-day affair. On May 1st, 2019, various American parent caravans are headed to Washington, with one leaving Liberty State Park, New Jersey at 10 a.m. On May 2nd, 2019, we are engaged in a lobby day to present our reports to every member of Congress. We have experts in law, politics, education, and psychology addressing our group at the Congressional Ballroom of the Holiday Inn Capitol at 7 p.m. that evening. On Friday, our march leaves Lafayette Square Park at the White House and proceeds down Pennsylvania Avenue to the Capitol. The candlelight vigil that evening is intended to pay respect to all the veterans, parents, and children lost to suicide and premature death as a result of this epidemic. Please take care of our own parents in vital need of reform and assistance. Respectfully submitted, parents of America. We are simply parents of America. It's time to pay attention to us. If you don't, we're going to remove you from office. That's what we do. It's what we do best. This identifies the problem. The federal government is funding an epidemic. Lawyers, judges, service providers are getting rich off of us. But this, let's just face it. We're tired of, corruption, politics. It's time for the people they were elected to serve. And I'm going to say, the parent march on Washington is tomorrow, and we are here from all over the country to put you on notice that we want an investigation. And you're going to have an impact. It's a country self-governed. That means we rule, but you got to get in their faces one way or the other. I know there are people out there that say, no, you talk to me. They say, they do some amazing things. You got to get in their faces. Because this is what's going to change America. This is what you need to focus on. And they will finally do a story on it. We should have media covering this all over the place. Here, the moms and dads of America, we don't have to try to get respect. We have to respect us because we've had enough. And you know what? I think it's working. And why do you think it's working? Because they have moms and dads. They're going through all of this. They recognize our message. It shouldn't be so hard for the media to cover this. When enough of these are passed to people around Congress the way we just described it, they're going to start talking. And the calls are going to be made to the White House and elsewhere. Something's going on here, okay? The Revolutionary War wasn't started with a giant group of people that suddenly showed up on a battlefield. It was started among people who got together and said, we've had enough. And we won over a great country that we have today. Sadly, we've lost so much of those principles that make this country great. And we are the people that have to instill back in this country what our principles were all about, the American way of life, the principles, the constitutional rule of law that we put forth as our government is expected to observe. We're sick and tired of it. It's time to start paying attention to the moms and dads who are suffering so immensely in these courts. We can stop this somewhere. Who's going to stop this? The moms and dads of America. I believe that. I truly believe that's what's going to change this country. And we parents, we can't deal with this anymore. It's gotten so out of control. So this 3-day event, which was conceived in December, and for you good people that have made this possible, this is an epidemic, and it's affecting families all across America. And we may, and future generations, why don't you look at that for just a second? I mean, children we will never see, decades, maybe even centuries down the road. We are the ones that are the pioneers for them. And I think that's why we're doing this. And the court process is a winner and a loser. Well, you know what? Now, these are the expert speakers at the Holiday Inn Congressional Ballroom the night of our second day, May 2nd, after we got done with the lobbying efforts in Congress. It was an extremely humid day outside as we went between the buildings because for those who have never been to Washington, or you don't even know, most people, I mean, even I didn't know really how the buildings were all set up, and I ran for Congress at one time. But there's the Capitol building, the one we're all familiar with, and then there's the Senate buildings on one side, and the House buildings on the other. So we had to go to all these buildings, and there are tunnels that you can go, and it helps you out. But for the most part, we had to go outside, and it was hot. It was well into the 90s. Fortunately, the following day, when our march went forward, it was a gorgeous day. It wasn't humid, and it was so. But this is these are the 4 expert speakers. They're just excerpts taken. This is a child psychologist from well-known throughout the country. He goes on speaking engagements, and he was highly recommended. So he's our first speaker, followed by a gal who was dealing with child support out of Texas, and she delivered a nice speech about child support being a farce, being an abused item, followed by Dr. Pappas, judicial immunity, and then you have attorney Lawrence DeMarco. Again, he produced the video, and he talks about how we can get involved by becoming committee persons, and you can see videos that he's produced in that regard very recently.
That's not what families need. They're not in a jousting contest. Their goal is to continue parenting their children.
Arguably one of the most unconstitutional acts executed by the family court system involves the child support system they use to debtor prisons when parents allegedly owe child support debt that they cannot afford to pay. It is critical in this fight that we educate the public and the legislators as to why this particular child support enforcement tactic violates the Constitution.
And no group of citizens is above the law. We all are pointing out that there are these rules that the judges are supposed to follow, what the Supreme Court says they're supposed to follow. Well, the Supreme Court should overturn this doctrine of judicial immunity, but it hasn't done that.
Become a volunteer with your local committee. Be a committee person. Every committee across the country has a Facebook group where every video that we're creating can be posted, every documentary.
Thank you, everybody. I want to say hello to all you folks in the White House. We are the first heads of America. Whistleblower. Investigate family courts. Investigate them and stop the human rights violations here in America and at the border. We are American first.
Now, see, we started the march at Lafayette Park in front of the White House. And at one point, after, several people, actually, I don't know how many, but quite a few, got on the bullhorns and made their own statement right there, very short distance from the steps of the White House. I think that really separated us was a small lawn and then the gate. And so at one point, a group did come out on the veranda of the White House to observe what was happening out there. And that was just yet another way of getting attention. So here we're all getting together to start the march. And then when the Capitol Police cars showed up, put their lights on, that's when we got behind them and started the procession, the parade, if you will, down Pennsylvania Avenue to the Capitol, roughly 2 miles.
We are you. We're all over Congress. We met with members of Congress. We had all the investigative agencies. We had a success there.
When you go down the streets of the greatest thoroughfare in America and the free world, Pennsylvania Avenue, between the White House and the Capitol, go down that street and cross. And when you're going down there, there'll be cars and people want connection. They don't know about this because of the mainstream media and their definition of how we go in America.
Now, see, what's interesting about this aspect of it, and you wouldn't know it by just watching the video, which again, I encourage everybody to get that. You'll see it on my Facebook, and you'll see it on leonkozio.com. Just look it up, www.leonkozio.com, and you will see this full video. Again, it's only 15 minutes, a little bit longer here because I'm narrating as we go along. But what's interesting is we had 2 divisions, both with large banners, which I had professionally done ahead of time, and they were carried by a pair of protesters up front, and then the second division had a different sign for the second half of that march. And as you hear, what you just heard was the rear section, and they're talking about what do we want? Justice, okay? And what we were supposed to say was, what do we want? We want an investigation. The idea of an investigation is that we all have ordeals, and this way, with an investigation and oversight hearings, we all will have the opportunity to come in and make our cases known. And so that way we bring everybody into the mold, because if everybody comes in with their own agenda, it's too much for any state leader, judge, or oversight agency to understand. There's just too many issues out there, and then they fall back on their simple conclusion. This is he said, she said, family court stuff, and I don't want to get involved. It's too complicated. This way we simplified it, showing enough human rights violations. That's how we're going to get the Justice Department to do more than just call parents domestic terrorists. Here's where they're going to come in and find real human rights violations and then act on it. We already have the New York Attorney General, Letitia James, who opened up an investigation in Saratoga. This is hot off the press. And that's because she feels that the police were abusive upon the protesters there, the BLM protesters. Some of them stopped traffic. Others went into restaurants. Again, that's not what I consider peaceful protest. But if they're investigating that, then certainly they can investigate the carnage in divorce and family courts. We need to call upon New York Attorney General Letitia James, as well as our federal Justice Department, to investigate these courts. And then in all the states. Because if you, and Letitia James is running for governor now, and you wonder why she worked so hard to get rid of Andrew Cuomo. I'm just looking at different sides of the issue. And she's running against Kathy Hochul, who just had that commission on forensic custody evaluations. So here we are. These issues are now getting mainstream, and we need to enter that conversation, that discussion. We may not need, a peaceful protest like we had, but if you're going to investigate the abuse of BLM in Saratoga, then come on, let's look at some serious issues here, because it affects. Remember this: we affect African Americans. Maybe are the most harmed individuals in these courts. So this is something that really needs the attention, of our federal government. So now we're marching down Pennsylvania Avenue. Glenn, let's see if he's still with us. Glenn,
I have to make a comment if I can.
Go ahead, Glenn. Are you still with us?
Yeah, one thing I learned from being a member of Americans for Legal Reform, Harvey Cash, we went to Israel. He put a note in the wall, the religious wall there, I forget what you call a wall, and he said, please don't ever let it rain on our protests. I took that with us for many, many years, and we were scheduled for rain on that parenting event, and until we went into the restaurants where we had to feed many people, that's when it started to rain on us. When we finally got indoors, it hasn't rained on us. I'm just repeating for many, 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 many years, decades, that we never got rained on a protest.
Well, we were lucky here. We had a great day, as I mentioned earlier. The day before, when we had the lobby initiative, it was scalding hot in the 90s. I had all I can do to go between one building and the next. Fortunately, the following day, the temperatures dropped. It got into the 80s. It was beautiful, sunny. I don't think there was a cloud in the sky. And that was fantastic. But, I asked Steve Boyd yesterday what he thought about walking down the most prestigious thoroughfare in the world, the 6-lane Pennsylvania Avenue, and having its, traffic stopped so that we can go by. I mean, the 3 lanes go in one direction. You could see the Capitol in the distance, that beautiful white dome. As it got closer in the 2-mile stretch we walked, and we had all those lanes waiting for us. It was all cleared for us. So we had the police escort, and as Steve noted yesterday, it was a lot to get all the permits. We had to get 4 of them for the different locations: Secret Service, the Capitol Park Police, the Metropolitan Police for the streets, and so forth. But I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Steve. How did you feel, Glenn, going down Pennsylvania Avenue? I'm sure that was your first time, but we had a Super Bowl winner that was one of our parade marshals up front, who told me after flashing his Super Bowl ring that this was more impressive to him than the Super Bowl victory party. Would you agree with Steve and Jamie Brown of the Denver Broncos? Would you agree with them? What were your emotions walking down that Pennsylvania Avenue?
Well, what really struck me was, of course, that we had the place shut down, both sides at one point.
Right, that's right.
The amount of people that were watching us, the bystanders, which was massive amount of people that were walking, it's like New York City, they were watching us and listening to us, and we had a lot of support from the people on the sidelines. They all know it. Every family's been affected from this family court garbage. So that was the most powerful thing to me that stuck in my mind. The bystanders that were watching us. It was hundreds and hundreds of people on this side.
Well, one way that, it sure felt like that, right? Yeah, you know what? Yeah. Well, you know what? One thing that you distinguished yourself, and I commended you at the end. I was really worried about you because you were on that bullhorn, in the middle of it all, and you were just going, and at one point you were losing your voice, and you managed to do all that 2 mile plus stretch, and you still finished. I mean, sometimes I know, I think Gorman took over for a little while there, and you heard him just a little while ago, but you continued to, make your statement everywhere we went. And at one point there was, you might recall, that big truck that had the big side, and that's the sign he put up, and he was parked on the other side of Pennsylvania Avenue. Remember that? And he said, this is the most important thing, the child. And when we went by it, you'll see it in the video, we got all excited because there were people that were supportive of what we were doing, and somehow must have caught wind of it ahead of time. So I'll continue to play this, and we'll get to more of it.
When you go down the streets and they see these messages, that they're going to see this and they say, where are you guys? Where have you been? And they're going to applaud us. And so what you do is say, join us.
Most people don't know that the parenting right is a liberty right. It's a right that the Supreme Court of the United States has repeatedly and unanimously said is the most important. The oldest liberty interest protected by our Constitution. That Constitution is our law. You can't change that law. It's because we that exercise those rights and made families happen that we have the country we have today. And that's why we're here today. And it's going to grow. It's going to grow. This is just the beginning of a great movement. We have been destroyed. We have been financially bankrupted. And we want to be there. They're here because they believe in this, and they want us to do what they can do. Talk about the protesters. And if they won't listen to us, we're going to come back. There's this sign with this is the most important person in the world, and it's got a picture of a child on the side of a big truck.
We went to college, we were there, we were on the side, we loved them. We did everything we were supposed to do. And that's why we have to take the action. The FBI building and the Justice Department.
Here we are in front of the Justice Department. We stopped, made our pitch. People watched us, lawyers walking out, stopped.
That's going to roll. I'm convinced that I'm fighting tooth and nail to make all this happen. I really haven't got a lot of resistance. I think because you play them right, they're with you. And I think they like that.
Talking about resistance from law enforcement or the politicians.
They mess with the wrong person. And they mess with the wrong people. They mess with the wrong people. We're not going to let them do this anymore.
Hi, my name is Natalie.
Now this is where we finished the march. We're on the back side of the Capitol. Again, it's a gorgeous day. We set up a sound system. Glenn is right. We were all on a budget, but we did good considering what we had to work with. And you will see just the variety of just the selection of the speakers that Attorney DeMarco was able to capture on his video, and then condense it and give you a good feel, a flavor for the participants and the group leaders and the sheer diversity of the people supporting us from all around the country. And they all had some very important points to make. One was actually a Marine veteran who did a poem of sorts, and he makes an important statement. Jamie Brown, he makes a statement about making it better for our children after us, and so on. And Carlos is there, and again, the whole list of people that we have come to know over the years that are brothers and sisters in arms here, working on this fight and this movement that really could become something. We're getting there, folks. It's just, now it's time to make the big move. We have to do this. It's, I've been at this 12 years. I can't do it anymore, but I am prepared to continue this for as long as I can. And all these people were so motivated by just the people they met over the 3-day stretch and the information that was shared, the things that were learned. So I'll play this series of these sampling of speakers on the congressional lawn right behind the Capitol building, a very short distance from the entranceway and the exit ways of that giant, beautiful dome structure, which was in the background. The pictures, the photos were phenomenal, as was this video, which again, I'm encouraging you to see in its full form on my website, leonkoziel.com, Facebook, and it's all over, social media.
And I am a non-custodial mother. I founded an organization called Amazing Mothers Without Custody.
I have become a member of the board of the National Strategic Management Board of Human Rights to move these human rights, because that's what this is. This is an issue of human rights. Not parents' rights, not mother's rights, not father's rights, not children's rights. These are foundational human rights.
We believed in the wisdom of the judges who preside, the attorneys that defend us. We were unaware of the reality we would face: corruption, abuse of power, and financial destitution. The mantra of in the best interest of the children is a farce. In reality, it's a system whose true best interest is profit.
Now, that was Dr. Carlos Rivera. He was severely affected by this, and he's been at so many events now, and he was at this one, and he's still involved. Glenn, didn't he do like a walk or something down Long Island at one time in protest after he actually did, I think, didn't he do 6 months for child support delinquency after they, I guess, closed his medical practice or something or another, and he couldn't make the payments?
Yes, that was, well, so we understand that's Judge Cheryl Joseph. She's considered the 5th worst judge in New York State. Yes, she did a job on that. He was a doctor, and he wasn't able to practice. They took his license away. I seen Carlos about a year and a half ago. He was $550,000 in the arrears of child support. And obviously, when I was in there, we had tremendous amount of court watchers. We were all thrown out of my court room several times. Judge Joseph hated me at this point because she was being stereotyped. So forgive me for getting off that subject, though. But yes, Carlos was very well watched. He was on many news programs, always on the FM radio, and he was spoken about very well. So yeah, Carlos, he's trying to get back into his practice, so he's been on the low side. He hasn't been getting involved because he can't be going to jail 6 months per offense. It's not 6 months per year in this child support, 6 months per offense. So you could be spending your entire life in jail for child support. Carlos did. Kelly did. I've been fortunate. I'm not in the arrears. But I feel very bad for Dr. Rivera. He's, I loved watching him. I was so happy to see other people from Suffolk County that were fighting these criminals in this court. But let's remember one thing about Suffolk, so many of you know out there, it's been an experimental county. They always experimented. Any kind of new laws that were coming out, they always implemented them in Suffolk County first to test what was going on. So it's always been a cancer filled in Suffolk County. Corruption. Most locked up politicians in New York, and sometimes in the United States coming from Suffolk. So God bless these guys, Carlos and Kelly and the rest of them for fighting. Of course, myself, I got punished. They wiped me off the map. Just want you to understand. So I don't want to talk about my case. I'm just talking a little bit about it.
No, that's all right, and I'm glad you confirmed it was him. But for many of those viewers, you don't know how you could get up to over $500,000 child support arrearage, how that could happen. But this gets back to the Title IV defunding scheme. The greater the amount and the number of child support orders that are issued, the more they get in the way of performance grants from the federal government. Originally designed, it was supposed to get deadbeat dads and track them down and so forth back in the 80s. Times have changed, but they've kept the system in place. Now, instead of, at that time, you had to be, an absentee dad. The finding was to track you down if you ran from your responsibilities. Today, all you got to be is declared a non-custodial parent, and then you are now in that category. If you go over state lines, $5,000 debt, you could be charged with a felony. And they're doling out these 6-month terms like bus boys in a restaurant. I mean, and there's no regard. I mean, you have that woman down in Florida who didn't even show up for her own domestic violence case. Everybody showed up. The father, whoever she was claiming against, showed up with his lawyers, spent all kinds of money. The judge is there. They all waited. She never showed up. So the judge held her in contempt for 3 days. They did a massive protest. All the women's groups got there. And the Florida Supreme Court actually reprimanded that judge for giving her a mere 3-day sentence for contempt. The question was asked earlier, how do you get in contempt if you're filing in federal court? Well, if you are given an order not to file anymore, and you do anyways, and I know there's a lawyer out there that did it, you are then you can be held in contempt and do time for that. But the way child support, it's a money debt, and they arbitrarily increase, like in the case of Dr. Rivera, I know myself, what you end up doing is you're holding them to the same level of income as when you were practicing, whether it be in his case medicine, in my case law, and you never climb out. And while you're doing time in jail, you are still subject to monthly child support obligations. So you may never come out of this. And it's become so lucrative. Nobody is addressing these debtor prisons. They brought it in through the back door, and I tried to address it. They don't want to hear it. So, you know, the longer you want to stay, you know, at home and in the comfort of your homes with your keyboards and whatever, the more this is going to get worse. So let's watch the rest of this.
Changing the direction of our divorce culture is what.
Now, this is Chris DiMaggio. You know, I know Glenn mentioned him earlier. He ran FIT TV on Long Island, Suffolk County. I was one of my first interviews I did when I started my crusade. He invited me down. I did 2 videos. They're still online, by the way. He was there, and he brought his own crew, his own camera crew, and he did his own videos. So there were opportunities for people. If you wanted it, it was there. He was one of them, and here he made a wonderful pitch again on the Capitol lawn.
The judiciary is they're taking a huge risk with your lives. None of that really works for the culture of America.
If we do not work together, we're not going to get change. It's going to take you and everybody out there, especially on social media, on Facebook, on YouTube, to share every single thing that we do.
Now, we know that overall we're looking at about 22 million parents are erased from their children's lives. This is the court policy right here in making this change happen.
Every one of you has to take a leadership position, because I talk to you and I know you're all leaders, and I know people are going to listen to you when you go home.
And make a false accusation against you with the intention of receiving your children and getting custody of your children.
I've had to educate people across West Virginia to make them realize that our children are more of an extent of government money. They're trafficking children through our state, taking them from families. No warrants, no nothing. I am an alienated mom. I have had my timeshare removed without reason or way to get it back.
I will tell you that they track us, foster children, so that they can remove our children on purpose for financial funding.
Are our lives in the hands of these family court tyrants? Are you feeling crushed? Tell me, please tell me. Are you tired of being crushed by the hands of fake family court gods?
Because we want people to have an opportunity to do better than we did, to lose less than we did.
That was the Denver Broncos Super Bowl winner, Jamie Brown. He was one of our parade marshals.
Yes, my name is Daniel Pura. I've been alienated from my daughter past 7 years.
7 years alienated from his children.
Outrage, you're not paying attention. And corruption is legal.
You see her in a wheelchair. She brought up the rear of our parade.
It's not an accident. It's not oversight. It's a very willful, rotten act of defiance.
Until I die, I won't give up on my daughter.
So now we move on to the candlelight vigil, which concludes
So we
the.
dedicate this to those who are lost, those who are not here, who should have been here.
I asked if we could all turn on our flashlight.
We're in front of the Capitol, this time on the other side in front. In the evening of the last day, Friday, May 3rd, Stephen Boyd headed up this candlelight vigil, and now he's speaking and relating what happened to his daughter.
Lights on our phones and remove our hats and bow our heads. We're going to hold a 2-minute moment of silence for all the parents, like Chris Mackney, who did not give up on life, but rather a government who does not want to fix its broken system for our own children.
Now, Chris Mackney was an individual who wrote a tear-jerking goodbye letter to his daughter and committed suicide just before this event. So we put him in as the opening prologue, if you will, to our report. We took his entire suicide letter and put it as the opening to our report, delivered it to all members of Congress, and even that didn't have an impact. It's sad, it's scary. But in any event, Steve makes mention of Chris Mackney here as one of the people we're memorializing.
Children, like my daughter Gabrielle Boyd, who at 2.5 years old became another victim to the system and died prematurely on April 28, 2018.
I can remember when I was in Washington back in 2008, the very first event I came to. I went 2 daughters there. My eldest, she's a very jealous person over her dad. And everybody was doing what you guys, the same kind of a crowd. This is 12, 13 years ago.
This was 2008, the very first event I attended. I was practicing an attorney at the time. I brought both my girls down there. They were only, 4 or 5 years old at the time. No, they would have been 6 years, whatever, 6, 7 at the time. Time is going so fast. In any event, here's a picture of my eldest. She runs from the audience and she jumps into my arms because she's jealous that other people are asking me questions and taking up. This is her daddy, and she didn't give permission for any of these people to give questions and take his time away. And we're in Washington, and my youngest is in the hands of my paralegal at the time, who was with us. One of our group leaders, a gentleman that has been very much involved in the movement, he was there. And it's amazing that I could come down in Washington in 2008 with girls that young. And afterwards, we visited all the sites. That's the thing about a trip to Washington. It's not just a march or lobby day or whatever. Pick and choose whatever event you want to get involved in. But you get an opportunity to see these great edifices, these beautiful monuments that we, the taxpayers, built and created, and the hard workers that made those things happen over a period of over 200 years. And now you can be there firsthand and say you were part of it and have your pictures taken, everything else like which I did with my daughters and the entourage I brought with me. I had the funding then to pay for all this kind of thing. And we toured Washington, stayed a couple of days, and it was wonderful. And here I am now, what is this, 15 years later, and I'm not allowed to have contact with the same daughters who are now have just graduated from high school and the others in college. Now there's a paradox. There's some sadness, and you'll see a scene shortly where we conclude where both my girls were very young, and they come into my study, and it was part of a commercial when I was running for state senate, and it's the cutest little. You just have to see the video on your own later. Find it, and you will see. They're the cutest daughters in the world. I mean, you know, I'm biased, of course. You don't mess with daddy's little girls. That's what they did. Everybody asks, well, why are you doing this, Leon? You've sacrificed everything for this. What motivated you? Well, this. They mess with daddy's little girls. And they're messing with children all across the country. And this is what motivates us. I know from all the people I met countless. I mean, I have to say 100,000 maybe over all these 15 years. Sad ordeals, sad situations, large groups that I addressed. And this was a group I addressed in the Holiday Inn. I was a guest speaker at that time. And so let's see how that plays out. I was amazed that Attorney DeMarco was able to find this online and then put it into this video. And then later he asked, did I get the right video? And I said, you were right on the money. I don't know how he did it, but he did it. And that's a bit of fate too.
And my eldest jumped, and she ran and jumped in my arms. And she looked back at the audience. She said, this was her daddy. And she just didn't like the fact that other people were getting his attention. She's called me 3 times in the last 5 years. Thank you. And I'm going to close by saying that everything I've done here is for my daughters, Kristen and Cassandra. Thank you all. God bless you.
Now there's Attorney DeMarco on the right upper corner, and he did a video interview, a special from his studio that he has in his basement. I spent some time at his home. We did some strategizing after the parent march, and he did a very nice video regarding my whistleblower activity. That's received a lot of attention. That's online. That's a couple years old, I think. But in any event, so that ends that, and that ends our program as well. Glenn, is there anything you want to add before I close the program?
No, we're doing pretty good. You did good.
Okay, thanks, Glenn, and thanks for your input. And we'll stay in touch. We'll have a board meeting pretty soon with the CCAC, and we'll start strategizing for whatever comes up. I'm open to any ideas, any input anybody wants to give us. So again, we're daily, Monday through Friday. Leon's Library. It's sponsored by the Citizen Commission Against Corruption. Look up this video online. It's called Parent March on Washington. sponsored by Leanne Colesville and the Parenting Rights Institute. It was produced by attorney Lawrence DeMarco out of Philadelphia. So join us again tomorrow. We will have Dr. Anthony Pappas, retired professor of St. John's University, and he will be our guest speaker tomorrow. And then look for our videos on YouTube. Subscribe to our program. Help us grow. We are a not-for-profit organization, so you can donate and get tax-exempt status. And we want to grow the numbers. The more that we can grow these numbers, the stronger our influence will be, and the better off we will all be in it. So thank you. This is the longest program I think we've had yet, almost 2 hours, but I think it was well worth it. And I finally got that video out without interference. And that, I think, is something people could be very, impressed with. Okay, good night. Thank you for joining us.